Alright, I get asked this question all the time. Should I bulk or should I cut? I want to build muscle, so I should bulk, right? Or I want to lose fat, so I need to be in a big calorie deficit, right? Here's my hot take. 90% of people who are asking this question should do a moderate calorie deficit. Good morning. Welcome to final day of week 13. It is our moderate pull day. On deck for today, I believe we're starting with lat pull-downs. Chest supported incline rows with dumbbells. Got single arm cable rows, seated incline bicep curls, and then we'll finish off with pullovers. I added pullovers last week because this workout was feeling short, and I love pullovers. Be sure to stick around. Each workout, I do a daily check-in where we look at my weight, my weigh-in for the morning. We look at the nutrition for the previous day to see how adherence to the calorie deficit was, the protein goals, and all that. And as always, if these videos are helpful to you, like and subscribe. Just gives me a good signal on what video content people are enjoying and what they'd rather skip. Let's get a little warm-up. I usually do a compound lift to start, and so I'll warm up with 50% of that weight, and I'll do that for 2 sets, and then I'll do 75% for a final set for my warm-up. Lat pull down, I don't really consider that a compound lift, so I need to warm up another way. I like just doing some hangs, some SCAP pull-ups, and then a couple of regular pull-ups. Just decompress the back, feels good. Just a couple of full pull-ups. All right, let's get this second warm-up set. Just some hangs, SCAP pull-ups, and then a couple regular pull-ups. All right, let's get our setup for lat pull downs going. Come back. Today I want to talk about one of the probably the first questions that someone might ask when they want to get into good shape. Should I bulk or should I cut? What do I do? I'm not as strong as I should. Should I bulk or maybe a little bit have more body fat? Should I cut? Somewhere in between. I'm skinny fat. I don't have a lot of muscle. I think that question can be an excuse to procrastinate starting. And so I'm going to give you the advice that I think that works for 90% of people, and then we'll talk about some edge cases. All right, first set of lat pull downs. We've got 150 loaded on here. I can't remember how many we're doing. Look at the workout. That would be a smart thing to do. 150 pounds by 8 reps. 3 sets of 8. Here we go. Set 2, lat pull downs. Here we go. Alright, I get asked this question all the time. Should I bulk or should I cut? I want to build muscle, so I should bulk, right? Or I want to lose fat, so I need to be in a big calorie deficit, right? Here's my hot take. 90% of people who are asking this question should do a moderate calorie deficit. I would not recommend an aggressive cut, and I would also recommend against a calorie surplus. Most people who are wanting to get in shape, especially if you're in your upper 20s, you're in your 30s or 40s, most people, most men, and most women in America, and probably worldwide, our biggest epidemic is being overweight. So you need to be in a calorie deficit to lose the fat. But if you're asking that question, should I bulk, should I cut, you're probably also maybe somewhat of a beginner. And if you do a modest calorie deficit, you can both lose fat and gain muscle. Win-win, right? All right, last set of lat pull downs. We've got 3 sets of 8. All right, we've got chest supported rows. We're shooting for 3 sets of, look like we got 8, 9, 10 last week. So, somewhere around there. There are exceptions to every rule. That's why I said 90% of people. So I'm going to break down different types, different profiles of people and talk about why they may or may not want to start in a cut or a bulk. And then we'll talk about edge cases too, because there's always people on the fringe, and I don't want to make this seem like this one particular method will work for 100% of people, because I think that's invalidating to say that it's simple, just do this. I think for most people it is, and so I'm speaking more to that population because that's what I have experience with. If you are one of these edge cases where, I'll just name a few, where you have some kind of hypermobility ailment or some kind of nutritional illness, thyroid issue, or you have some kind of impairment, injury, disability, I'm not prescribing anything. I'm not a doctor, but I'm not really advocating that you stick to the advice that's meant for 90% of the population. Most of my advice is for the average person who is not super muscular. They're probably maybe a little bit overweight and don't have as much muscle as they would like. Second set of rows. Ugh. Last set. All right, we've got single arm rows. All right, so let's talk about the first group of people. This is the group I think most of us fall into. This is what I would call skinny fat. This is dad bod. This is someone who isn't super muscular and they have a layer of body fat. They're probably certainly over 15% body fat. I'm probably 17 or 18% right now. So they're certainly over 15. They're probably close to 20 or maybe even 25 or more, right? This is easy. And I think this is the one where people get the most confused because they're like, well, I'm skinny underneath the fat. I need to build the muscle, so I should bulk, right? No, absolutely not. You need to eat you need to figure out what your TDEE is, and that needs to be based off of weight training. You need to be lifting weights. You need to, number one, find a weight program that you can stick to that is using progressive overload. Number two, figure out your calories for maintenance. And then number three, eat in a slight calorie deficit to start. I say slight because the more aggressive your calorie deficit, the less likely you are to be able to build muscle or maintain muscle, right? So if you aim to lose a half pound a week, most of that's going to be fat, and that's only a 250 calorie deficit per day. And if you are asking this question, should I bulk, should I cut, and you're skinny fat, you're in your mid-30s, you're probably not someone who's actively been training, so you would be eligible for what we call newbie gains. So you can eat in a slight calorie deficit and still actually gain muscle. So to me, it's a super easy answer. No, you will look better, even if you didn't gain muscle, you will look better at a lower body fat percentage. And once you get down to below 15%, if you get close to 12% or 10%, that's when I would suggest bulking. And that's kind of my rule of thumb. Go off a body fat percentage because that's aesthetically what most of us look at. If you're going for strongman powerlifting, strength, this doesn't apply to you. If you want to look good, body fat percentage is one of the main driving factors to that. And it's the hardest, I think, to control, at least for me personally. So to recap, if you're skinny fat, if you don't have as much muscle as you like, but you have more body fat than you would like, start in a calorie deficit while using progressive overload weight training. Every time, no exceptions to this group of people, no exceptions. We'll talk about a couple other groups of people and what they might do differently. But for this first category, which I think most dads fall into, start in a moderate calorie deficit with progressive overload weight training. All right, second set of single arm rows. All right, we've got incline rows, curls. The second group of people you may find yourself falling into is what I would call skinny, right? You don't have a lot of muscle, you want to gain muscle, but you also don't have a lot of excess fat. You're too thin, right? You're 12% or 10% or lower body fat. And again, this is a pretty easy call. You need to be in a calorie surplus. You maybe refer to yourself as a hard gainer. You try to eat and you try to lift weights and you just can't gain weight. You need to figure out what exactly your total daily energy expenditure is. You need to be ideally weight training, resistance training, and progressive overload. There may be things in your life that are preventing you from doing that. So I'm not talking to you. I'm not an expert. I don't have advice for how to overcome those challenges. My advice is based on the assumption that you're a healthy individual who doesn't have joint or mobility issues, and you can weight train without injuring yourself. So provided that you are that person who's really skinny, you think you're a hard gainer, I would say make sure that you are in a progressive overload weight training program and that you are eating in a calorie surplus. There are online calculators. I have videos about how to use AI to help you find your total daily energy expenditure, and make sure that you're in a surplus. A moderate surplus would be a couple hundred calories, but maybe you go ahead and you shoot for 400 or 500 calories to start, just to prove to yourself that you can gain weight. And what I would say is, monitor your weight, also monitor your body fat percentage. Once you start getting above 15%, you start to look fluffy. I would consider myself fluffy. I'm probably about 17 or 18% right now. And that's going back to my methodology of when to cut versus bulk. based off of body fat percentage. Above 15%, I would say just probably need to go on a cut for a little bit, at least for a little bit. Get under 15%, get close to 10 or 12%. So that, I don't find as many skinny people in their midlife. It's more common for teenagers. And I think that it's also less common for teenagers to be aware of calories and total daily energy expenditure and protein. That's another thing I haven't mentioned. You definitely need to be hitting, if you're skinny, 1 pound of protein per pound of body weight or more, maybe 1.2, right? If you're 120 pounds, you maybe should be shooting for, I don't know what the exact math is, closer to 150 grams of protein or something like that. But first category was skinny fat. Always start with a cut, a mild calorie deficit. Skinny, start with a bulk, especially if you're young. In both of those scenarios, the assumption is that you're untrained. Maybe you've done some training in the past, or maybe you haven't done any training, or you're young. And in both of those cases, that should be to your advantage for gaining muscle. All right, set 2 curls. All right, the last group of people, and I might break this down into 2 subgroups, but you have muscle and you also have some more body fat. And this is assuming that you probably are more intermediate or an experienced lifter, like you are currently in a weightlifting program, or you have within the past couple of years done some on and off weight training. And so from here, I would say to this group, to cut or to bulk depends on your goals, right? And you see this with strongmen, with powerlifters, or with athletes who are already in pretty good physical condition, and they just maybe have some different things that they're optimizing for. So I think of Thor, the strongman, when he cut a bunch of body weight because he was getting into boxing, right? So the excess body fat and excess calories that he was eating that contributed to his superior strength was no longer needed. And to be in better cardio shape and to be quicker and more agile, it was more advantageous for him to shed some body weight, or specifically body fat. He wanted to maintain strength. On the flip side, I can think of people who maybe start out as bodybuilder and that prizes very lean body fat percentages, but maybe they want to shift to power lifting, or maybe they want to shift to strongman. And that's when you see a little excess body fat might actually help you. It might help you to be in a slight calorie surplus to help, number one, build muscle and then also build strength. And then maybe there's medium ground that you can find where it's a disadvantage to be at a higher body fat percentage because it puts you in a higher weight class. So maybe you want to cut down body fat percentage to get into a lower weight class while still trying to maintain as much strength as possible. So all this to say, if you are at 15 to 20% body fat and you already have a decent amount of muscle and strength, whether you cut or bulk depends on your goals. Are you trying to continue to get stronger and stronger? Or are you trying to look better? Or are you trying to perform better in a different sport? That's when I would suggest bulking or cutting. And in both situations, I wouldn't recommend going very aggressive. I would just do moderate, right? If you're bulking, I would only bulk by 100 or 200 calories surplus. If you're cutting, I'd only go for a half pound a week, 250 calorie deficit. So that's the third group of people. The fourth group of people I will briefly touch on when we come back are these edge cases that I mentioned before, right? You maybe don't fit into these 3 categories. You fit somewhere in between. All right, let's get our pullovers. We added this workout last week. because this workout and this whole routine tends to be a little shorter, and I love pullovers. So, I don't want to make wide, generalizing, sweeping statements that everyone is going to fall into one of these three categories. I know there are exceptions to every rule, and I think most of those exceptions are going to be based off of your personal health. So if you're someone who, let me put it this way, those three categories are assuming your underlying health is pretty stable, right? You don't have ongoing chronic pain in any of your joints or your back. That right there, I don't have an answer to, and I'm really sorry if that's you. Maybe you have thyroid issues, or you have some kind of legitimate nutrition, I don't know what to call it, malfunction, or something outside of what is a normal range, right? And that causes your metabolism to be either super high to where you can't gain weight, or it causes your metabolism to be super low and it's super hard for you to keep any kind of weight off. And so I would say that when you're outside of the realm of what the average human body considers healthy homeostasis, it makes these goals and these plans that I'm talking about makes it hard, really difficult, or impossible. And so I would say the number one step is when you fall into this category, your question shouldn't be, should I bulk or should I cut? Hopefully you're talking with some medical professionals about how to get your body healthy and what healthy looks like for you. All right, last set of the day. Be sure to stick around. We will do our check-in. Right. Every workout, I give you the update on my weight and my nutrition. There you go. All right, so let's recap. In regards to the question, should I bulk or should I cut? The vast majority of people should cut, right? Most people fall into the bucket of being skinny fat. You have more body fat percentage than you want. You don't have as much body muscle as you would want. Eating in a moderate calorie deficit and weight training and progressive overload will allow you to build muscle while losing fat. Second group of people are skinny. That's more of an edge case, I would say. If your body fat percentage is low and your muscle content is low as well, then maybe you should actually consider a moderate bulk. And then the third group of people was people who are strong, have a lot of muscle, but they have more body fat than they want. And I would say that it actually depends on your goals. Are you trying to get as strong as possible? Are you trying to look a little bit better? Or do you have another athletic goal in mind? And I'd suggest cutting. And the last group of people is a group of people who are maybe not healthy enough to maintain a calorie deficit or a calorie surplus and to weight train with progressive overload. And I would say figure out what healthy looks like for you. Don't go based off of what I'm saying. Don't try to chase other people's goals. That's between you and your healthcare providers. Do our daily check-in for our weight, but first thing I want to say, if these videos are helpful, like and subscribe, please. It really helps the channel out, gives me a signal on which videos you've enjoyed. And be sure to stick around. We are going to do the check-in every workout, especially during this 20-week cut. I make sure to show you exactly what my weight has been and what my trend is, what my goals are, and if I'm hitting them or not, and the nutrition from the day before, or if it's later the weekend, so that you can see how I'm executing on these goals, and you can see exactly what I ate in a day. So it may give you ideas of what you can do for your goals. So today, let's see, yesterday calories were 1607. That's back closer to what we wanted to be. The past few days I've been higher than I wanted to be, so I made sure to try and stick to the 1600 yesterday. I also weighed in this morning at 186.5, which is more in the direction I want to be seeing. This week, we want the average. We really are shooting for an average of below 188. We're looking for like 187.5 because last week we were 189.5, and I'm shooting for 2 pounds per week. My weekend probably disrupted that by having a high calorie birthday party weekend with pizza, cake, and ice cream. And then what I have seen is that I'm off track for my goal of 170 pounds at the end of the cut. So yesterday, what I did was I finally got out the rowing machine and I did a little sprint interval training, and I did 2 walks instead of my normal one. And in the video yesterday, I talked about how I'm adjusting my goals moving forward. I'm going to try and stick to closer to 1600 calories and shoot for an average of no more than 1800 calories on the week. Hopefully that'll put me at 2-ish pounds per week, plus adding sprint interval training and more consistent walks. I'm hoping that might actually put me a little bit above 2 pounds per week and get me as close to 170 at the end of the 20-week cut as we can get. For the actual nutrition content from yesterday, as we talked already, the calories were 1607. A good protein target, 188 grams of protein. So that's over 10 grams of protein per 100 calories. That's a good sign. We started the day off with protein and creatine and almond milk coffee, a protein bar. Lunch, we had a couple of chomp sticks. I had some sirloin tips with a rojo sauce that's just like from Aldi. I had that with a tortilla. I had some popcorn while I was waiting. And then for dessert, I had a low-fat, high-protein Greek yogurt. For dinner, I had a chicken breast and 1 cup of the wild rice soup I've been eating. It's pretty low-calorie, decent amount of protein in it. Not quite that 10 grams to 100 calories that I like, but low-calorie, so that's nice. A couple of sticks of gum to keep me from snacking. Carrot while I was waiting for food at dinner, and then like my dessert was a David bar. I think I had the salted peanut butter flavor, which was pretty good. So yeah, that worked out well yesterday. Hopefully we can stick to that the next few days. I'd love to stick to that 186-ish body weight, because if I can do that, I might actually hit my goal of 187.5 this week. So yeah, that's it for the check-in. Hopefully the topic today was interesting, talking about bulking versus cutting and what your goals are. And if, yeah, I don't know what else to say, except see you next time.